Hey beautiful people, what is up and welcome back to my channel. I'm Dreamla and I love all things beauty. I love all things makeup. I love all things skincare, and I especially love sharing my tips and tricks for how to find high-end and luxury beauty products at bargain prices. If that sounds like something you're interested in, I would absolutely love if you would consider subscribing and joining the fam. Okay, so I am very, very excited today because we have a collab. We have a collab with none other than the beautiful Yachty Beauty. And I'm so stoked because Yachty truly is the reason why a lot of us have this beauty community to begin with. I remember when I first really started getting into YouTube in 2020, I would join her Makeup and Chills, which were live, and you could just chat with people. And I met so many of you guys in her Makeup and Chill series that I talk to now, that I text on a regular, and none of that would have been possible without Yachty. And I recently got a chance to meet her in person, and she's literally as sweet, as genuine, as like just such a sweet, awesome human being that it just really warmed my spirit. You know, like, so for some people, their YouTube persona is just that, a persona, and for Yachty, like, that is who she is, and it's just so amazing. And the other thing too I want to say before we actually get into the video, we're getting there, okay, is that she's actually one of the few people that was like willing to help me when I was just starting my channel. It's not going to come as a surprise for you all to hear that not everybody on YouTube is helpful or willing to share some of the tips and tricks that they've learned and how they have been able to find success in this space. And Yachty so openly and freely like shared with me when she didn't even know me like that. Like, I remember I sent her a message and I was like, hey, you know, I'm thinking about XYZ. Is it okay if we like chat, you know? And she was like, yeah, let's get on a call. And I remember like just FaceTiming with her, and it was just such a like beautiful experience to have somebody that was just willing to share and so open and didn't feel like like they needed to be competitive or hold on to like any tricks or any trade. And that always really stuck with me because it just showed how open and how like much of a genuine, humble person she is, and how willing she is to help others just freely, without question, without any expectations, without wanting anything in return. And I have been so grateful for that, and I literally adore Yachty. So I'm really excited that we get to do this collab. I know I didn't tell her what we're doing yet, but you saw from the title and the thumbnail. We're going to be talking about products that need to go viral. Viral has become this like phrase where, you know, everyone puts viral in front of like, oh, this is a viral this and a viral that, but sometimes it's not. And then sometimes the things that go viral or people say are viral, it makes you like scratch your head like, really? That's what we doing? That's what's going viral? So what Yachty and I decided we'd do is that we would sit down and tell you guys a couple of products that we think need to go viral, that we think deserve the viral title. So buckle up, get you a snack, get you a little drinky drink. I have here a what is this? A sorrel mimosa. My sister made sorrel for Christmas, and if you are Trini, you know that sorrel is the Christmas drink in addition to puncha creme. So I have some sorrel, threw a little prosecco in there, so I have me a little sorrel mimosa, and we are gonna dive right in. Okay. She did that. Okay, so to start things off, I want to start with a product that is not new by any means, but one that I think creators did dirty and it deserves a second chance, and it is the Natasha Denona Zendo palette. I think that this deserves a chance to go viral again. Now, when this first released, the reviews on this were literally horrendous. People hated this, and it was like a visceral reaction to like, I really don't like this, this is terrible, this is the worst quality ever. And I remember sitting in my little corner like, but I think it's fine, I think it's good. And I think that now we are in a place where people can really, really appreciate this palette, and we need to pull it out so that it can go viral again, because I don't think that it got a fair shake, and because of that, you know, people have been wary to purchase it. If you look up reviews, most of the reviews are really bad. And when I look at this palette, I appreciate this so much more than most of Natasha's other palettes because this is very different. Now, when you look at the Natasha Denona collection of especially her midi palettes, what I've come to realize is that most of them are extremely monochromatic. Like the Glam palette is just sort of like cool tone neutrals, bronze, warm tone neutrals, retro, mauvey tones. And this is one where I think Natasha gave us cool and warm tones in a way that is so much more versatile. Like when I look at my other Natasha Denona palettes, I feel like I get the same kind of look all the time because the shades are so very similar and they're so monochromatic. And when you have a 15 pan palette, you don't need to be that monochromatic. You need to have a little bit of variety, a little bit of spice. And that doesn't exist in a lot of midi palettes. And what I think a lot of people got hung up with is, you know, you have this sort of cool toned section and this warm tone section here. And yes, if you mix certain shades together, it can get muddy. But if you mix the cool and the warm side right, which I think we are now beginning to realize how to do that properly, you can come up with such beautiful looks, like literally stunning looks. And if you wanted to, you could just stick with the sort of cool tone side or stick with the warm tone side or mix and match. And I feel like the other thing too that brought this palette down is that everybody was in this phase of, if it's not sparkling, if you can't like basically blind somebody with the shadow on your lids, is it really doing anything? And the shimmers in here are soft. They are that soft, beautiful shimmer that I like when I'm doing more corporate type events or things where I don't need my eyeshadow to be sort of the focal point, because then it can be very distracting. In some ways it can be unprofessional, and people weren't here for that softer shimmer, but I was, because I feel like there's a time and a place. You know, there's a time when you want to be sparkling for the gods and you can pull out your Patricia. But there's a time when you just want something that's subtle. Even if you wanted to do something bold and you wanted just like a bold lip, you could do a softer eyeshadow. That way the focus is on your lip. I don't like when you do too bold everything, because then it's like, okay, whew, child, that's a lot. So I feel like we all owe Miss Zendo an apology, and we need to, you know, bring this back, give it another fair shake, and make this go viral, because this palette is bomb.com. I'm just saying. And I really, really love this one. This is definitely in like the top of my Natasha Denona collection, and y'all did Zendo dirty, and I still haven't let that one like go. Still haven't. But yes, this is my first product that I want to talk about. Next up, bronzer. So I have two bronzers that I want to talk about. First, I want to talk about the Rare Beauty bronzer, because I think that this one did not get its moment to shine. And this is probably my favorite cream bronzer, hands down. The pigmentation of this, the undertone of this, oh my gosh. As a deeper complected person, sometimes you get those bronzers that, you know, they want to create warmth, and in their mind warmth is red, but it can look really, really harsh on a lot of people, including myself. I'm a medium deep complexion, and red bronzers just look like somebody punched me in the face and I am bruised. So I prefer my bronzers to lean a little bit more neutral. And the undertone of this Rare Beauty bronzer is literal perfection in that it's not too red, and it's the perfect texture and creaminess where it's easy to blend, easy to build, and it doesn't leave your skin so emollient where if you have oily skin, you're gonna worry about, it's not blending in very nice. Like, look at that. It's beautiful. And let's just, do you see that? And it turns into an even like powdery texture so that it doesn't stay super emollient and sticky on the face. Like, I love this bronzer, and you can even see it compared to my hand, how it adds warmth without it being so red, where it's like a very harsh bronze on the face and it just looks like I've been like punched in the eye or whatever. Like, this is stunning. And I think the reason why this kind of like fell short is that, you know, the Rare Beauty blushes kind of overpowered a lot of things in the Rare Beauty lineup. Like, when you hear people talk about Rare Beauty, very rarely do they talk about the bronzer as like the first product that comes to mind. And I feel like this has just been like in the background, minding its business, and people have forgotten that it exists. And I think that we need to bring this back, because this is, in my opinion, the blueprint for cream bronzers. If it ain't bronzing like this, then I don't want it. I don't want it at all, because this is bomb.com. The next bronzer that I think not a lot of people knew was on the market has to be the Trixie bronzer. First of all, packaging 10 out of 10. And do you see the size of this bronzer? This is massive. This is so big. Let me show you all this compared to another one. So this is my Dior bronzer. This is the Trixie bronzer. It literally basically eats this up in terms of size. And the best thing about this bronzer is you get 2 bronzers and a highlighter. So this released in the summertime when everybody and their mother was releasing bronzers. So you had the Charlotte Tilbury Cream bronzer, and you had a couple other bronzers that came out on the market. And oftentimes when you have that many of the same product come out, you know, there are some that fall to the wayside. And because Trixie is a indie brand, it didn't get a lot of the attention that more mainstream brands get. But I think that that is so unfortunate because honestly, I think it did it so much better than some of those mainstream brands that came up. Now, what I love about this, like I said, is that you get 2 bronzers and a highlight. One of the things that indie brands talk about is that when you're creating products, especially products that require multiple shades, it can be very hard and very expensive because you have to purchase a certain amount in each shade in order to do that. And I think the way in which Trixie was able to get around that by creating this bronzer that comes with 2 bronzers and a highlight was fabulous. Now, it only has 4 shades technically, so the 4 shades, but because each of those 4 shades come with 2 bronzers, it turns out to be more like 8 shades. And when you really think about it, most of us need 2 shades anyway, because once you're lighter in the winter time, sometimes you need like a slightly lighter bronzer because the one that you've been using in the summertime is too harsh. And then when you get a little bit, you know, tan deeper in the summertime, you want something that's a little bit more rich. So the fact that you get basically a summer bronzer shade and a winter bronzer shade, and because, you know, you never know how things are going to go, you can actually mix these 2 together to get a 3rd shade. What more could you ask for? And the highlight could be used as an actual highlight, or you can actually mix it into the bronzer to turn this from a matte bronzer into a glowy bronzer. Did you just hear all the things that I said you could do with this bronzer? This is basically 3-4 products in one, which no one talked about. And I don't understand why it didn't go viral because it's so freaking good, and the packaging itself is stunning. It's just so beautiful, and you get so much product in this, for the price. I really wish that this got more hype than it did, and I do think that this deserves like a second go around because baby, this bronzer is so good. And I've even found that it's not too red, and I can buff out some of the redness with the lighter bronzer. And I have this in the medium, the 3rd shade and the 4th shade, and I can use both. Like the 4th one is a little deep for me, and I have to go in very light-handed, but I could use both of those shades. So I've really enjoyed this, and I think this is one of the most underrated products of 2022. Okay, next up, I want to mention one blush, and that is the Bare Minerals Bronzer. I know, you're like, Bare Minerals? Who still buys Bare Minerals? I do, okay? I like their bronzer. Now, I'm not a big Bare Minerals like fan. I don't buy anything from them, but this bronzer, they said it's supposed to be a mix between a blush and a bronzer, but honestly it's just a shimmery blush. But it's the type of shimmery blush that I think works well for people with oily skin tones. When I hear shimmer and glow, sometimes I'm like, okay, greasy and just oily. That's what that translates to in my mind. And I think that for a lot of people who have oily skin tones, those words can, you know, go greasy and oily in their mind as well. So a lot of times we tend to avoid these glowy blushes and these dewy things. So this I was a little hesitant to try, but honestly, when I tried this bronzer, it was beautiful. It gave the healthy glow that people with dry skin talk about that I have never experienced. And I was very surprised because I was like, okay, this is gonna make my skin look greasy, but I think that it added a really nice flush to the face where it looked glowy without looking oily. And even the longer that it wore, it didn't get glowy, it didn't get oily yet, you know. And sometimes that can happen where it's like, okay, it looks good for like the first 5 minutes, and then after a while it's like, looking a little greasy. This did not do that. And it does only come in like 3 shades, so they definitely need a shade extension. But I think that this is such a beautiful formula that we we should be talking about it a little bit more than we are, because it's so good, and I would love to see them come up with more shades, because I have not been able to find another glowy blush like this that makes me feel really nice and confident and doesn't make me very like self-conscious about, oh my gosh, am I like greasy? Am I greasy yet? This is so good for that. Okay, throwing it back again to another old product that I don't think people talk about. And like, I remember when Jackie Aina talked about this and she tried to hype it up and it didn't go viral then, but I think we should try again, and that is the Derma Blend powder. This is such a beautiful, beautiful powder. It's finely milled. It can set your face beautifully, set your under eyes beautifully, and it's very soft and light on the skin. And I really, really love that. And something about this shade specifically, which is a little bit like neutral, just looks perfect and looks flawless. And what I like about this is that this kind of gives me the effect that I get when I use the Pat McGrath blurring powder, which I know everyone has raved about the Pat McGrath blurring powder, under eye powder, because it's so good. And yes, that deserves all of the hype, but this does that as well. And you get so much more products and for pretty much the same price. So I think that we need to make this go viral because it's so good. And Derma Blend is a brand that I feel like a lot of people just don't think about when it comes to makeup. So that this has just been sitting on the shelf, just minding its business, and no one knows that it's so good. Like, honestly, this is amazing. And when I literally purchased this off of the recommendation of Jackie Aina when she did her video, and I was like, why is no one else talking about this? We're just gonna ignore that this exists? And pretty much that's what has happened. But if you haven't tried the Derma Blend powder, and it comes in other shades too, so if this is not your shade, you can get other shades. You really should, because it does, in my opinion, exactly what the Pat McGrath under eye blurring powder does, and you get more product for pretty much the same price. Okay, I want to talk about one skincare product, and then we're going to end with other eyeshadow palettes. So, the Niacinamide Brightening Toner from Good Molecules. If I've said it once, I've said it a bajillion times. This has literally changed my skincare. It is the best thing Good Molecules has ever put out. This is what taught me that niacinamide is a product that my skin likes. It makes my skin look healthy and refreshed and hydrated and kind of glowy, but not. It just looks like it's like lifelike, and it just looks full and supple and fresh. And if I had to get rid of everything else in my skincare routine, minus my prescription products, and only keep one product, it would be this. And I have purchased bottles and bottles and bottles of this, and I keep coming back, and sometimes I'll stop and be like, oh, well, let me try this other thing. And it just doesn't do this. And I feel like I don't see a lot of people talk about this toner. And I don't know if it's because a lot of us just don't know or haven't tried niacinamide, doesn't know what it does for their you know, for their skin in terms of like helping with hyperpigmentation, really helping address some pores. I don't know, but I feel like I've been screaming about this toner from the rooftops, and I don't think I've really heard a lot of other people talk about it. I said it once, I'll say it again. This is the #1 product that I would recommend from Good Molecules. It's the best of the best. And I think it needs to go viral. But also, should it? Because if y'all buy out all of the niacinamide toner, I'm gonna be mad as hell. But just give it a try. Just give it a try. And let me know after you finish your bottle how your skin feels and how it looks, because y'all. Alright, now let's end on some eyeshadow palettes. I feel like eyeshadow is one of those things that's very, very hard to go viral because there's so many products that get released every day, specifically when it comes to eyeshadow, that a lot of products just don't get their time to shine, you know, because it's on to the next palette, it's on to the next formula and whatnot. So I really, really wanted to include some eyeshadow palettes in here because I think that the eyeshadow market is so oversaturated that products that really should be getting the hype and going viral aren't. So let me tell you about the ones that I think should. Okay, first and foremost, the Oma Beauty Freedom Palette. Now, the Oma Beauty formula is superb, and I did not know that until I tried the Freedom Palette. And if we're being very honest, I feel like I have not seen a lot of people talk about this Freedom palette, and the people that I've seen talk about this Freedom palette are Black creators, smaller creators. I haven't seen any of the larger, more mainstream creators really use this. I've seen a handful of white creators use this, and they've loved it too, but I feel like in general, the amount of people that have used this palette has been significantly smaller than it deserves, because this is so good. This is such a beautiful palette. And not only is the color story just really beautiful, the formulation of this is really, really stunning and superb. And I think that for a mainstream palette, it should have gotten more hype because it includes duochromes. Now granted, these aren't the strongest duochromes, and if you operate in the indie market and you use indie multichromes and whatnot, you know that they're not the strongest. But I think for a mainstream brand, this is so unique and different that it should have gotten more hype, because we don't see mainstream brands do duochromes quite like this very much. And I don't want to downplay how good this formula is, because I do think that this is Pat McGrath quality. Like, is it the same formula? Absolutely not. But is it equally like good and deserves its own pillar? 100%. This is a stunning Italian formula where the mattes blend like butter. You get a good range of mattes from like really light to really deep, so you can add depth. And then you get these toppery, shimmery shades where the minute you shine a flashlight on it, it just like twinkles and sparkles. And I think that this deserved to go viral more than the actual lipsticks, because if we're being honest, this came out with that collection where they had the lipsticks that had like the little sparkles on it, and those lipsticks went viral. But I felt like the palette got forgotten in that, and honestly, I think the palette deserved more hype than the lipsticks, just saying. Next thing I want to mention is the Dose of Colors. I'm just saying the eyeshadow formula broadly. I don't know what's happening at Dose of Colors. I don't know if the brand is doing okay or not, but what I will say is that the Dose of Colors eyeshadow formula is really good and super duper underrated. And what I love about their shadows are their mattes. They have some of the most beautifully pigmented blendable mattes. When I really started getting into eyeshadow and makeup, these were the mattes that I was using first. These were the mattes that had the pigmentation that someone of my complexion needed, but they blended really well. And I think that if you are a deeper complexion, you would really enjoy the Dose of Colors formula. And even though they didn't have like crazy shimmers, the metallics, those metallics are bomb.com. Like, look at this. This is such a beautiful palette, and this is probably what I'm going to wear on New Year's Eve, because it's like the perfect New Year's palette. But when I tell y'all the Dose of Colors eyeshadow formula is underrated and it needs to go viral, it needs to go viral. And I think one of the issues with the Dose of Colors brand is that they created their palettes as kind of separate. So like you only get mattes, and if you are not a all matte person, you may not be inclined to purchase a palette where, okay, you're just giving me a bunch of mattes. Granted, these are the perfect companion palettes. So if you have a lot of singles and you just need mattes to pair them with, like this is their original Baked Browns palette. I used to reach for this all the time because you can never go wrong with like brown mattes, because you can pop one of these two transition shades in the lid and then deepen it up with this one and then plop a shimmer on the lid, and it's wham bam, thank you ma'am, you have a full look. And I think that Dose of Colors as a brand has really kind of like fallen off the radar of a lot of folks, but the quality is so good. And I would love to see somebody just, you know, pick up one of their palettes, try the matte formula, show how it blends, and then it just goes viral, because you need good staple mattes, and they really do have that. Okay, another palette that I think needs to go viral, and this is like, I feel like it needs to cross the indie market into like the mainstream, the Blend Bunny Surge palette. I scream about this all the time. I'm like literally shouting about this palette from the rooftops, and I need other people to shout about it too, because where have you ever seen a palette like this? Where have you ever seen a palette that gives you pastels, neons, deep grungy shades, and shimmers all in one, and it's perfectly curated where you can get basically every color of the rainbow: pink, purple, green, blue, orange. Never, ever. And I think that the reason why I want this to go viral even more is because of the fact that all of these shades work well on my complexion. Like, I knew they were gonna work really well on lighter complexions, but I have never found a palette where I could use the pastels in it. I've never had neon shades, and I was really skeptical going into this, but these neons show up on me, and they're not really showing up on camera very well, but this entire bottom row here is neons. This entire top row here is like pastel shades. Like, it is the most perfectly curated palette, in my opinion, where if you wanted a little bit of everything, you got a little bit of everything. And you can, you know, customize your looks to your desire, because there's so many different levels of depth where if you are not as deep as me, you can go really light. And obviously, you know, folks that operate in the indie space have used this, have loved this, have talked about this, but I really, really want this to go viral and go mainstream, because I don't think that there are other palettes like this on the market, and because of that, it should be viral, right? It's the only one in my knowledge, to my knowledge, right? So there's that. And lastly, I want to end on the Nabla Cutie palettes. These are some of my favorite eyeshadow palettes to use because they're so stinking cute, like the name says. Now, these are 6-pan palettes, and they all come like this. They're all numbered, but they are some of the most beautifully curated 6-pan palettes. Look at this. I actually might wear this one for New Year's instead. It's like a cool toned, silvery 6-pan palette. I feel like a lot of times palettes will go from quad to like 9-pan. And I have very few palettes that are like 6-pan palettes, and these are just stunning. I wore this the other day, and it's just as beautiful as when I first tried it. Let me swatch this one shade for you guys so I can blow your mind, because okay, you see that? Thank you. Do you see that? Oh my god. I die every time. And the reason why I think these Nabla Cutie palettes should go viral is because these are some of the most perfectly curated small palettes. Not only do you get, you know, 6 shades, which I think is enough to create a really nice look, but I feel like the folks that put together these palettes create color stories that allow you to create more than one look. Like, some of my issues with quads is that, okay, it's 4 shades, chances are you're gonna get 1, maybe 2 looks. With these palettes, you can usually get like 4, 5 plus looks, and not only are you getting multiple looks, but you get multiple formulas. Like, the Nabla folks have done a really great job at, in those pans, including in these like small tiny 6 pans, giving you like a regular matte, a cream to powder matte. You'll get a topper shade, you might even get a duochrome shade, you might get a satin, and then you might get like a standard metallic. And when you have that level of like variation in the shades and the formulas, you can create so many different looks. And you know, like, we talk all the time about like the Tom Ford quads and some of these other small quads, but no one really talks about these little cutie palettes as like perfect for travel. You get a lot of looks, and you have like the different ones that you can choose from. So like, you have the cool toned neutral, the cool tone platinum palette, you have the blue one, you have like a more coral one, there's even like a really nice neutral, warm neutral one. Like, all of those, they exist. Like, I have pretty much the entire line, and I feel like those just never get talked about and never get hyped. So I would love to see those cutie palettes go viral, because they are worth it. Like, save your money, don't buy them Charlotte Tilbury quads, don't buy them Tom Ford quads. Try a Nabla Cutie palette, because one, you're going to get 2 more shades, you're going to get 6 shades, and it's going to be absolutely stunning. Okay, and that's it for me, guys. Those are all of the products that I think really need to go viral, and maybe you guys will help me get it there. Now, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and hop over to Yadi's channel and give her video a watch. I'm about to do that right now. I can't wait to see the products that she picked, because I think that we're going to have a couple differences in our products and in our lineup. So make sure you head over to her channel, let her know that I sent you, send her some love from me, and all that good jazz. If you are coming to me from Yadi's channel, or if you're just new in general and this is your first time, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I have so much content coming in 2023, and I would love for you to join the family. As always, I appreciate each and every single one of you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for spending some time with me today. and I will catch you in my next one. Bye!